The garage smelled of oil and time, a mix of rust, grease, and dreams that hadn't quite come true. Jackson wiped his hands on a rag and looked over the old Mustang, half-stripped and weather-beaten. The '67 model had been sitting untouched in his lot for years, but today something felt different. As he reached for the socket wrench, a soft voice interrupted the silence. "Hi," the girl said from the edge of the doorway. She couldn't have been more than 10, crutches under both arms. Wide eyes. Curious, Jackson stood upright, confused. "You lost?" he asked gently. The girl smiled and shook her head. "No, I came for the car." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "The Mustang? This car doesn't even run, sweetheart." She looked at the rusted frame, then back at him, determined. "It's the car from my dreams, the one I told Mama about." Before Jackson could answer, a tall, sharply dressed woman stepped into view. Her heels clicked against the concrete, her eyes scanning the space with distaste. "Evelyn," she called. "What did I say about walking into strangers' garages?" But Evelyn only grinned, her hand resting gently on the car's chipped hood. Jackson recognized the woman now. Diana Wexler, billionaire tech mogul. She'd made headlines for building a startup empire from nothing. Her daughter, though, was something the headlines never talked about. "Ma'am," Jackson nodded, clearing his throat, "didn't expect to see you out this way." Diana's eyes settled on him, cool but curious. "Neither did I. Evelyn was very persistent." Evelyn chimed in again. "He can fix it, Mama. He's a real mechanic." Diana sighed. "Sweetheart, I can buy you 1,000 better cars." Evelyn's voice cracked with emotion. "But none like this one." Something in Evelyn's tone softened Jackson. He knelt beside her. "Why this one, kiddo?" She took a breath, her braces creaking slightly as she shifted weight. "Because it's broken. And I'm broken. But maybe, if it can run again, so can I." The words hung in the air, heavier than the tools on the shelves. Diana's face changed. She looked away, blinking. Jackson stood slowly, brushing dust from his jeans. "I don't know if I can make it perfect," he admitted. Evelyn nodded. "It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to go." Diana hesitated, then stepped closer to the Mustang. "What would it take?" she asked. Jackson rubbed the back of his neck. "Time, parts, love." She smiled faintly at that last word. "And payment?" Jackson shook his head. "Not this time." Her eyebrows lifted. "Why?" He glanced at Evelyn. "Because I know what it's like to feel like something people threw away. Maybe we both need this." Diana didn't argue. Instead, she turned and said, "We'll be back tomorrow. She wants to watch." Jackson watched them go, the girl's crutches tapping softly like a heartbeat down the sidewalk. That night, Jackson couldn't sleep. He lay on his cot above the garage, listening to the hum of cars beyond the city. His thoughts kept returning to Evelyn, to the fire in her voice. The next morning, she arrived with a sketchbook and a folding chair. She positioned herself near the Mustang, flipping through pages of drawings. "I've already designed the color," she said, proudly. Jackson peeked at the paper, a blue so bold it looked like summer skies. "You've got an eye," he said. She grinned. "Mama says I've got a whole toolbox in my head." Days turned to weeks. Evelyn became a fixture in the garage. She'd bring Jackson lemonade, play old rock on the radio, and sketch ideas for seats, wheels, and dashboard trims. Diana, though reserved at first, began to linger too. One afternoon, Jackson found her wiping grease from Evelyn's sketches, trying not to smear the colors. "Didn't expect you to hang around," he teased. Diana smirked. "Didn't expect you to be decent." "Thanks," he chuckled. "I think." She watched as he replaced a carburetor. "You don't just fix cars," she said softly. "You fix the way people feel." The Mustang slowly came back to life. New shocks, custom panels, leather seats stitched by hand. Jackson worked after hours, sometimes late into the night, fueled by more than just obligation. He didn't know when, but Evelyn had become family, and Diana, no longer the intimidating billionaire, felt like something else too. One rainy afternoon, the Mustang roared for the first time. Evelyn clapped so hard her crutches clattered to the floor. Jackson helped her up. She wrapped her arms around his neck, hugging him tight. "We did it," she whispered. Jackson blinked. Back sudden tears. "Yeah, kiddo, we did." News traveled fast. Local reporters showed up to cover the broken car and the girl who dreamed. Diana deflected interviews, but Evelyn always spoke brightly about Jackson. He believed in the car, and me. Mechanics from other shops dropped by to offer help. Volunteers brought parts, paint, even custom seatbelts for Evelyn's size. Jackson's garage, once forgotten, turned into a movement. Kids with disabilities sent letters, sharing dreams of cars they'd never drive, unless someone like Jackson believed in them too. He didn't ask for it, but the world had started watching. Diana noticed the changes too. Jackson, once a grease-covered loner, now smiled more. He shaved, cleaned up the shop, bought better lights. "You're different," she said one evening as they closed the garage. "You brought light here," he replied. "You and your girl." She looked at him, long and quiet. "You did something for her I couldn't buy," she said. "You gave her hope." Jackson shrugged. "She gave me more." They stood in silence until Evelyn called from the truck, "Mama, Jackson, let's go get ice cream." Diana laughed, full, real, and warm. Jackson didn't remember hearing it before. Evelyn had one final request. "Can I ride it on my birthday?" Jackson hesitated. "You mean drive it?" She nodded, crutches leaning beside her. "Just once, just a little, with you next to me." Diana stepped in, concern written all over her. "She doesn't have the strength." Evelyn looked at her mother. "But I have the dream." Diana turned to Jackson. "Can we make it safe?" He nodded. "With some. A mod and me in the passenger seat." "Yes." Evelyn's smile lit up the shop. Jackson swallowed hard. "Then we'll make it happen." The morning of Evelyn's birthday dawned bright and cool. The driveway outside the garage had been swept clean. Banners waved. Neighbors, reporters, even former skeptics gathered in lawn chairs, waiting. Evelyn emerged from the garage in a denim jacket and fingerless gloves, her braces gleaming. Jackson held the door open, guiding her into the driver's seat. Modified pedals, custom grips, a harness built just for her. Diana knelt beside her daughter. "You ready?" Evelyn nodded. "I was born ready." Jackson climbed in beside her, gave a thumbs up. The engine purred. The crowd fell silent. Evelyn's hands trembled on the wheel. Jackson whispered, "You've got this." She pressed the pedal, slowly at first, then faster. The Mustang rolled forward. The driveway stretched ahead like a promise. People cheered, some cried. Evelyn laughed, a sound so free it made Diana cover her mouth in awe. At the end of the path, she hit the brakes. The car stopped perfectly. Jackson clapped. Evelyn pumped her fists. Reporters rushed in, cameras flashing. "How does it feel?" Someone yelled. Evelyn beamed. Like the dream came true. Jackson looked at Diana. Her eyes were already full of tears. Later, when the guests were gone and the lights dimmed, Diana sat on the garage steps beside Jackson. "You changed her life," she whispered. He shook his head. "She changed mine." She reached into her purse, pulled out a folder and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "A business proposal," she replied. "You and me. Custom cars for kids like Evelyn. We fund it together. I'll build the brand. You build the cars." Jackson stared at the papers, stunned. This is real?" She nodded. "So was today. And there are a million more Evelyns out there." Jackson took a deep breath. "I never thought I'd matter like this." Diana looked at him with quiet admiration. "You mattered the moment you treated my daughter like more than her limits." He opened the folder, heart pounding. At the bottom, Evelyn had scrawled in crayon, "Jackson's garage, where broken things run again." He laughed, blinking fast. Looks like I've got a new boss. Diana nudged him playfully. Partner, she corrected. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, hands on her hips. Well, are we doing this or what? Jackson grinned. Yeah, kid, we're doing this. The sky over Los Angeles shimmered with a gold hue as the sun began to set. Inside the pristine walls of the Bennett estate, Evelyn wheeled, herself beside the massive bay window, watching the clouds drift by. A week had passed since she'd first seen the rebuilt car. Her dream, now a reality, but it wasn't just a machine anymore. That Mustang was a symbol of something no doctor, therapist, or technology had ever given her: hope. Her mother, Olivia, sat nearby with quiet wonder, trying to understand how a poor mechanic had managed to reach her daughter in ways she never could. Down in the guest garage, Miles worked late, meticulously fine-tuning the engine. He had no idea that his small act of kindness would spiral into something this profound. The Mustang had done more than earn him a paycheck. It had pulled him into the orbit of a girl who believed again, and a billionaire who was rethinking her own world. Yet he still didn't feel like he belonged. That garage, with its polished floors and chrome racks, felt worlds away from his dusty corner shop back in Bakersfield. Miles didn't hear Olivia approach until she was standing near the hood, her designer heels clacking lightly on the tiled floor. You don't need to keep fixing it. You already did the impossible, she said softly. Miles glanced at her, wiping his hands on a rag. Perfection doesn't stop at possible, he replied. Olivia studied him, not just the grease-stained shirt or the calloused hands, but the heart behind the wrench. He hadn't asked for recognition. He hadn't asked for money beyond what was fair. He just cared, and that was more than she could say for most in her world. I've had 20 engineers look at that car over the years, she confessed, her voice tinged with disbelief. None of them could make it accessible without compromising the drive. You made it dance. Miles chuckled. She's the one dancing. I just gave her shoes that fit. Olivia wasn't sure why her eyes welled up again. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was relief. Or maybe it was watching a man who had no formal degree outperform the brightest minds she'd ever hired. Would you consider staying? She asked. As what? Miles replied cautiously. As someone who reminds Evelyn and me that heart still matters. The next day, Evelyn took her first drive alone down the estate's inner driveway. It wasn't long, maybe 100 feet, but the independence on her face made Olivia cover her mouth with trembling hands. Staff paused to watch, unsure if they were witnessing something authorized, but Olivia waved them off. Let her, she whispered. That same afternoon, she invited a few board members of her Mobility Foundation over to meet Miles. Some arrived expecting a mechanical genius, others came thinking he was just a charity case. By the end of the meeting, they were all somewhere in between, shocked, curious, and quietly impressed. The board meeting turned into a presentation. Miles, awkward in a borrowed blazer, stood beside the car and explained the adaptations he'd made. No complicated jargon, just passion and function. People say accessibility limits performance, he told them, but I think the problem's always been the imagination of the builder. They listened. Some took notes. One executive from a medical design firm even asked if he had patents. Miles laughed. I've got receipts from the junkyard and a toolbox from my father. Evelyn watched it all from her chair, her small hand resting on the door of the Mustang like it was alive. 2 weeks later, Olivia invited the press. She usually avoided media unless it was for strategic philanthropy, but this time it felt different. She stood beside her daughter, who now moved more confidently than she had in years, and Miles, in a slightly less wrinkled blazer, answering questions with a mix of humility and charm. Why this car? One reporter asked. Evelyn smiled, shyly. Because I used to dream of driving fast. Everyone said I should dream smaller. Miles didn't. The quote went viral. By nightfall, their story was everywhere: TV, blogs, social media. The phrase "dream at full speed" began trending globally. Olivia wasn't ready for what came next. Emails poured in from parents with disabled children, mechanics offering to volunteer, and venture capitalists wanting to explore scalability. But this wasn't a business yet. It was a moment. Still, Olivia's mind, always sharp with enterprise, began to churn. With Miles's permission, she had her legal team file a provisional patent for his design. She also created a fund named after Evelyn to provide custom adaptive vehicle builds for underprivileged youth with mobility challenges. The first hire? Miles. His new title, Head of Innovation, Adaptive Division. His pay enough to make his hands tremble as he signed the offer. Miles returned to Bakersfield just once, to shut down his old shop and give his last 3 clients full refunds. Life changed. Gears, he said simply, leaving behind his hand-painted sign and a pair of coveralls that had seen too many summers. Back at the estate, Olivia offered him a small house on the property near the stables. He declined. "I'll rent nearby," he insisted. "If I stay too close, you'll start thinking I'm part of the furniture." Olivia smiled. "I already do." Evelyn, meanwhile, had begun physical therapy with renewed fire, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The new Mustang wasn't just a car anymore. It became a prototype. Showrooms requested demos. Disability rights groups called it revolutionary. And at the heart of it, a teenage girl and a humble mechanic stood like unlikely co-founders of a movement. Evelyn gave her first TEDx talk in a quiet theater downtown, titled "Why I Stopped Apologizing for Moving Differently." She ended the talk by pointing to a screen behind her, a picture of Miles holding the wrench that changed her life. "Some people see limits," she said. "Some people build past them." The audience rose in a standing ovation. That same night, Olivia watched the video again and again, tears rolling freely. She'd spent fortunes on doctors, trainers, and specialized equipment. None had done what this man with a wrench and a soul full of grit had done. Her circle of wealthy acquaintances didn't understand. Why him, they asked. She never had the right words, but when Miles was honored, at a foundation gala a month later, she stood up beside him and finally found them. "Because he didn't fix a car," she told the audience. "He fixed the story my daughter told herself about her body. That's something money can't buy." Months passed. Demand for the adaptive Mustang grew. A partnership was signed with a major auto manufacturer. Miles insisted they include local mechanics from underrepresented backgrounds in the initiative. "If I can do it, they can too," he argued. Olivia backed him fully. Soon, garages across America were being trained in his technique, turning old junkyard shells into dream machines for kids like Evelyn. TV shows came calling, so did celebrities. But Miles refused all the flash. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about movement for everyone." The world finally listened, and it started with one rebuilt Mustang in a quiet garage. Evelyn's confidence soared. She began attending adaptive racing events, speaking on panels, and helping test drive other vehicles. The girl who once stared silently out her window now stood tall, figuratively, and sometimes even physically. At one event, she turned to Miles and said, "You gave me wheels, but what I really got was wings." That line became the slogan for their nonprofit. Olivia trademarked it immediately, not to own it, but to protect its meaning. She knew what it had taken to get here, and she knew one thing for sure: this story, her daughter's story, would never have happened without a poor mechanic who saw possibility where others saw parts. By the 1-year anniversary, the impact was undeniable. Dozens of teens were now driving adaptive muscle cars tailored for both independence and thrill. Media called it the Hope Garage movement. A documentary was released on streaming platforms, featuring behind-the-scenes footage of Miles building the prototype, Evelyn's first solo ride, and Olivia's. Emotional confession. I thought money could solve everything, but love, skill, and stubborn belief, they changed everything. That night, after the premiere, Olivia found Miles alone, looking at an old photo of his father in a dusty frame. "He'd be proud of you," she said. Miles replied, "I just hope Evelyn is." She was. The next morning, she handed him a small box. Inside was a brand new wrench engraved with, "To the man who built more than a car." He held it like treasure. No paycheck, no award, no title could match what that gift meant. It was validation, pure and personal. And as they stood in the garage, surrounded by tools and possibilities, Evelyn said the words. He'd never forget. "You didn't just change my life, Miles. You reminded my mom and me what life could be." He looked at her, speechless for once. In that moment, everything he'd lost made sense again.